The reason why I'm excited about the last section is, not only because we've been partnering with Stripe since we started from day one, but also there's a lot of things going on in this space, and for those of you that have recently followed the news, and you might have seen Stripe's big acquisition of Bridge, and why is that important? Because of the Genius Act in the United States, and the world's getting a lot more open towards stable coins. There's a big strategy in the push there. AI clearly is changing the game in terms of the SEO as well, and how people are procuring services. So SEO becomes a lot more relevant in terms of how LLMs are crawling information, and people are now buying stuff inside the tools like GPT. So that's why we've invited Stripe, and first I want to thank you guys for helping us set this up. It's been a pleasure working on the engineering side, on go-to-market side. It's such a great partnership we have with Stripe. And also listening to Stripe during the Stripe tour this year on the vision that this company has in terms of not just the payment space, but the whole commerce space, and how you guys think about building products that are future-proof makes Podix and the whole art team very excited about the partnership and how tight we can integrate our services to allow and enable everyone using Podix to experience that. And that's why I'm excited about this session, because there's a lot to unpack during the session. We even have a few slides. So I'm very happy to introduce Brendan. You can introduce yourself as well, and then we can start and kick off in some of these topics.
Well, Bordo, thank you for the very kind introduction. You guys are terrific partners as well, and thanks for including us in today, and thanks everyone for having us. Quick introduction of myself, Brendan. I'm one of our go-to-market leads for the New York office, covering startup and SMB customers for Stripe. So really also working closely with platforms like Podix to make sure that their merchants and customers have the most up-to-date and best payments infrastructure, so that when you do all this hard work to get customers in the door and acquire them, you can actually get paid successfully and give them a world-class experience. And that's where we really fit in with Podix today, and then excited to share some of the things we're working on that'll be available very soon, like agentic commerce and making sure you show up well on SEO, and when someone's transacting right within ChatGPT or any LLM, as well as stablecoins, which I think especially for our international business owners are incredibly helpful and useful for your merchants, and then of course like the omnichannel experience. So excited to get into that.
Yeah, let's kick off.
We're definitely make sure I'm staying on what's most relevant for everybody here.
We can start, and then I'll get the team to load the slides.
That's great.
So the first one that we wanted to start off and talk about is the agentic commerce. Yep. I think that's a big chunk, and a lot of people, like even us, when we talk about Podster's experience and how we feel about the SEO, we've invested a lot of time in SEO, and now things are shifting and changing. We even discovered a couple of months ago, looking through what comes up in GPT, and it's like, hey, we're not the first one anymore, because something changed. And then we got into a panic mode in terms of trying to fix that. So why is that relevant? Because of the in-app experience that people want to check out directly from GPT, and I want to hear more from you how Stripe sees that, and of course what we can do to enable the studio owners in terms of how they sell better and what their experience is.
Yeah, it's a great question, and we have some slides that'll pop in a little bit, but without looking at those, I think Sid introed this really well with since 2023, I think we've all been living in a lot of these LLMs, and in many ways, the LLMs are replacing the checkout experience and shopping cart experiences that we've gotten traditionally used to over the past few decades. Marco, we can also.
Yeah, you can talk. I'll set up.
And I think in our experience at Stripe specifically too, is right now Stripe as a large enterprise is acquiring 10% or so of our customers through LLMs. So we wanted to make sure that we can also offer that to our merchants and the owners and operators and founders who are working with us, so they can show up and be relevant. So Borko did a great job talking about, about a week ago, we launched our agentic commerce protocol with OpenAI, which that sounds complicated, but really simplifying it, it's a way for businesses to show up and allow consumers who are working through those LLMs and having those prompts and queries to look for products they need, show up and get that merchant at the top of the recommendation list and allow consumers to actually check out and transact right within that interface. Given inside of applications, this is going to be relevant. Inside of the LLMs, this is going to be really relevant. And then even thinking inside of a chatbot experience or support experience in the future, having commerce enter a lot of these different experiences is going to be really relevant. And so we specifically want to be a really good partner to help enable that for you all, and working with our platforms like Podex to distribute that and make it a really easy experience. And allow you to capitalize on that. I think I loved Sid's talk, but talking through all the different people who are managing all these elements, I'm sure a lot of you have been focused on SEO for so long. We're hoping we can be a good partner and help you kind of leapfrog when agentic commerce is really relevant, and have the tools you need right away.
So I think we went through this conversation before, and I think it's relevant to ensure that checkout experience is great. And what I want to dig into is when people think about how this will become a norm in the next maybe a year, what's your advice in terms of agentic experience for studios that have obviously the Podex experience, which is their main booking experience, but then when we think about other ways of how they get clients in terms of their own SEO efforts, and what would your advice be on how to up their game?
Yeah, and I don't want this to be too Stripe specific, but I know how we're approaching it. Is I would recommend working with a platform like Podex, who is using cutting edge technology and payments infrastructure like Stripe, because not everyone is going to be supporting experiences like this if you're thinking about legacy payments technology. So working with a market leader like Podex is really important, and leveraging a partner like Stripe with expertise can make this easier for sure. And then I know, Roy, I was talking to you, for business owners who are leveraging multiple platforms, you can have different payments infrastructure across those platforms. So, not to talk too much about Stripe, but where we fit in is hopefully we can help you do that across multiple platforms with a low lift, and that can really help you as a partner. And for our experience, we've been recommending to be ready for this shift, have Stripe's updated checkout experiences enabled, which you all do, and some of our most popular consumer methods. We have a payment method some of you might have seen. It's called Link. You would have seen it on, if you bought a Cursor subscription, it's probably on that checkout experience. Very similar to Shop Pay as well, if you're familiar with Shopify as a consumer, but making sure you have those methods so consumers save their payment details once, and then when they come back to you in the future, you have those securely tokenized with Stripe. So there's a level of trust there as well, and that you can keep that transaction experience really simple for them. That increases conversion, which is obviously very meaningful from a revenue perspective for everyone, as well as just, I think this group has been really thoughtful today on showing up well for your customers and having it not be an overly transactional experience. And I think you can think about payments and the checkout experience as part of that customer experience, hopefully. And that's agentic commerce is a part of that. It's not the whole story, but.
So the next one that I want to dig into, we have a lot of obviously clients who, and I see in the room that people mentioned people from the crypto industry recording a lot of content. Yep. They're big podcasters, and there's been quite a lot of conversations around the stablecoin strategy. And after the Genius Act, after Stripe acquisition of Bridge, a lot of these, especially here in the room, there's people who own studios in different parts of the world, like India, Hong Kong, UK, a lot of different markets. And this becomes increasingly important because they operate with sometimes clients from the different countries, they operate in different markets, and obviously Podex is a global solution, right? Serves a lot of different markets, which effectively brings in challenges in terms of cross-border payments and a lot of these other matters. So how do you see this big push that Stripe has in terms of the new stablecoin strategy affecting businesses who operate globally?
Yeah, absolutely. If you don't mind, I think that's a very relevant point you brought up, and I know this is a little bit misformatted, but from the Stripe data we have, and luckily we have a lot of data that we hope benefits you all, merchants who are leveraging Stripe. We noticed that 85% of consumers will potentially abandon a checkout when their favorite payment method isn't available. So stablecoins is a part of that, as well as thinking about optimizing for global payments, working with a partner like Podex, who leverages Stripe's payments infrastructure. You have all of those local payment methods, whether it's Latin America, Europe, Asia Pacific. All those payment methods are typically an extra few sprints for your development team to add for a normal processor, whereas Stripe and Podex, you get that integration up and running, and you can just turn those on with the click of a button and show up as relevant to your customers. Of course, working to your great points, that's increasingly relevant with stablecoins right now because this is a newer player to the game, especially internationally. You can see Brian Armstrong from Coinbase here, but there's been a lot of market activity. I know, I'm sure a lot of people in this room follow the Circle IPO that was very successful a few months ago. who issues USDC, which is the most common stablecoin and one you can transact on Stripe. And the Genius Act has put together finally a clean regulatory framework for business owners and founders to be able to make clean decisions and not worry about the SEC looking over their shoulder because there's just no rules of the game. There are finally rules of the game, and it makes it really easy to accept these. And why that's relevant for a global consumer base is, as many of you are probably aware, card payments are expensive, and it's there can be risk associated with it. Cross-border payments are traditionally very expensive. Stable coins are significantly less expensive and allow you to do cross-border payments, typically reducing those fees by a lot of times over 1% just on those cross-border fees, as well as those transaction fees that you probably see from Stripe or Square or whoever your merchant processor is. So these are not only a really good driver to reach more customers and have some more positive checkout experience and increased conversion, but significant improvements to margin typically on payments by adding these. And then maybe everyone's aware, I probably skipped over explaining what stablecoins are. Hopefully the whole room knows because they're pretty cool, but fundamentally these are valuable because crypto can be a little volatile, as interesting as most of the applications are. Stablecoins marry the benefits of cryptocurrency with the stability, the traditional stability of the US dollar, and having that be, typically the backing for these stablecoins in a really easy denomination to do international business.
Can I just check a show of hands of who's brave enough that they went into accepting crypto in their, oh wow, okay.
Yeah, well, we're setting up, but one of the biggest things that we just saw with you guys, that definitely US podcast studios need to be aware of. So I'm in Florida, and Florida just changed the laws on podcast studios, accepting tax, charging tax. So depending on all the services that you offer, some of it's taxable that you have to collect Florida sales tax on, and then some of the services are actually not. So we actually fix this in Podex and Stripe to where when they're checking, when they go to check out, it will collect the correct sales tax, which is phenomenal. So I worked with your internal team on that because Florida will get me if I collect the right sales tax and pay them the sales tax.
Thank you. Well, the reason why I asked the question is that we have in our studios people coming in as why are you not accepting crypto? When are you going to start doing that? And I think more and more we're seeing this move into a mainstream space where Stripe is obviously leading the charge because early this year, bridge acquisition, then the Genius Act comes in, things kind of fall in place, and I think more and more we're going to see these worlds combine or collide, and that's where we also feel excited about the whole payments aspect of Podex, where I think the flexibility and the ability to save money and the ability to make more money becomes a reality because of all these flexible options, right? So
yeah, and we've just, because of me not being a subject matter expert in crypto, whenever we've accepted it, we just immediately, the way we have SOPs is we just turn it into regular money. So we do accept it.
Okay.
I think too, it's easy to think if you're very focused in the United States that this might not be a major market opportunity. This is some great data from Visa where stablecoin usage is approaching 25% of card volume that they're seeing. So Visa's even partnered with Bridge, which is a Stripe company, to start issuing stablecoin cards you can transact in stablecoins. So really fascinating time. And then hopefully, ultimately, this is a very low lift for customers who are leveraging Podex and Stripe. And we want to make it as easy as possible for you to meet those market trends when they're happening with limited integration effort. And that's why those are typically supported from the, right in the Stripe checkout experience, and makes it really easy to offer those to international customers. And these are particularly popular for those who are unfamiliar in markets like Latin America. I think we're seeing a lot of the news on Argentina. In the United States, these are really valuable to help just individuals hold the value of their hard-earned money and transact we have the benefits of in the US.
Super. And then I think the last one we wanted to talk about, we spend a lot of time talking about the in-studio experience, and that's something we at Podster also care a lot about. And one of the obviously experiences that that we wanted to explore and that we also during discovery process talk to many studios is the in-studio checkout experience, and that's one of the pieces where I think this falls really nicely into the unified checkout strategy, and the way that you are able to check out online, offline, where it doesn't matter where what's the preference of your client, they should be able to have that in-studio experience, and Stripe is well positioned to enable us and help us to deliver that.
Yeah, absolutely. Borgo, I know this is one of the most exciting things that our teams are working on together, is unifying that commerce experience for products merchants. And I think too, looking like very high level at how consumers view this, most consumers are looking for a unified commerce experience and get very frustrated when they have to go to one provider or one solution, point solution for your in-person experience, and one for your online. They want typically to be able to pay the first time, maybe for an initial booking, and then when they return, have it really be easy to maybe pay in person, or just have you initiate it in person for them. Really simplifies things for customers. These are also typically things that actually save businesses a lot of operational costs on, given maintaining multiple systems has its own fixed costs typically associated with it. And so being able to reduce the infrastructure you're using, one, good for the consumer, two, very good for you, hopefully, on increasing conversion in that customer experience. So that's hopefully how,
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting one because we've started off at Podster, we haven't been using it at all, and then as we talk to studios, it's during that discovery process where we need to understand, services in demand, and in the next section, after the workshop, we're going to talk more about learnings and insights from the discovery process. So it's clear that some studios are requiring this, and then the more the studio footprint grows and the more that you have footfall in the studio, you might get requests like this, and clients would appreciate having a seamless offline checkout experience or on-site checkout experience. So maybe across these few areas, does anyone have any question for related to payments, related to Stripe?
I have a question. There was a slide about that 25% of your transaction volume is on stable coins. What is the US market of that?
That's a great question. I don't know the data off the top of my head, because I know I actually have this Visa on-chain analytics that we could probably share after for like the full report on stablecoin usage. But this is like the full market evaluated, like that Visa identified of stablecoin transaction volume. So not specifically on Stripe, but 5.7 trillion is substantial portion of global payments volume.
25% of all transactions that happen.
So it's approaching 25% of the volume of like the major card networks. Is that set?
That's incredible. I find that I don't find that believable, frankly. But I'm not saying you're like information point. I just find that crazy, and I wonder if it's like Latin America driving it, or
some of these
that have less stable.
Admittedly, we can look into the report closely.
Yeah.
I believe some of this is also, there are substantial cross-border transactions that are occurring B2B that make up a very low transaction count, but massive transaction volume, which I think leads to some of this.
It's just a crazy stat, man.
I think there were obviously people who were more receptive for these kind of payment methods in the past, but we had clients who run their own businesses and they have never touched fiat, and now they're more focusing on implementing something like this because it allows them to more flexibility and more options. I don't think it has reached this volume in kind of B2C, more retail space. I think there's yet a lot of room to grow. But as you mentioned, like B2B space probably very skewing these numbers.
And then you mentioned that the fees associated with transacting the money is reduced from kind of an industry standard 3%, I guess roughly like 2%. My understanding of cryptocurrency is that, in theory, there really shouldn't have to be any. Do you think that with more widespread adoption that number could get even lower?
Yeah, I think that would be the hope, is that reducing transaction costs increases the amount of commerce that's done, which is certainly like a net positive for Stripe products and society probably in general, is reducing those transaction costs.
Is it easier for you guys to, I assume, with more typical currencies, the transaction of it is more difficult, and thus the fee of 3% to you guys and credit card processors all over the world makes sense? I mean, is it physically easier? Is it, since it's just a little bit more straight up digital, or is it the same workload for you guys to transfer Bitcoin or stablecoin than it is for the US dollar?
It's a good question. I think the rails are different. So it's just fundamentally very different. Like if for like I'm more of an expert on traditional card payments. I wouldn't say expert, but traditional card payments, you have the interchange costs, which you're paying to the banking partners. You've got scheme fees and assessment fees on top of that. They're going straight to Visa, MasterCard, American Express, and then you have the processing costs on top of that. Just a lot of players that need to be paid out. And then you have this legacy rewards card infrastructure and things that crypto's just basically starting from a very new, it's just a totally new starting point. Like if you look at the history of card payments versus how crypto's working. So crypto's going to be more efficient. I'm definitely not an expert on it, but I think the idea is that the cost will be lower. It's going to be more secure. It's going to be more trustworthy too. If you think about things like smart contracts and making sure that there isn't massive dispute issues or things like that. So without being on our crypto team specifically, I would say it's just totally taking a different approach to processing and transacting versus those legacy systems. So they operate a bit differently.
How do you think about what's gained versus what's lost when you ask a first-time paying client, say, to create an account, log in, and put in all their details, which are then held, so that there's the advantage of later being able to charge them things more conveniently. I currently use a system where you don't have to do that. They just get a link, and then they just whack in their card details, but you can't keep it because they haven't logged in. Right? How do you think about the risks of having systems like that versus just making it as quick and as simple as possible without asking for all that information so that people can just transact? Because it seems to me like the most important thing is to transact as quickly as possible with the least friction, get them over the line once they pay, and kind of got them. So is there anything you can say in terms of the behavior of the customer and what you gain versus what the risk is?
Yeah, and is the question understanding whether you're getting permission to store card information and retry it later versus just one-time transaction and initiating a one-time transaction each time?
Yeah, it's just quick.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you on whatever reduces friction the most is probably the right way to go. Typically, there will be a default option to save your payment details if you're just using a traditional card transaction for future use, especially if you're signing up for a subscription, of course. That's going to be relevant. That's also convenient for your consumer because they're used to that for things like subscriptions, if that's what you're doing. And they don't want you to send them an invoice every month, probably, if they've given you permission to set up a monthly billing plan. But then if there are consumers who are uncomfortable with that, you still have things like Apple Pay that make transactions easier, where they have their, it may be stored on their phone, or they can just do a traditional card payment. Definitely would say, thinking about something like Stripe or any payment processor as a toolkit to meet your customers where they want to be is probably the best approach. So if you know that your customers don't like that, you can be completely flexible in what payment methods you want to offer and how you want to accept that transaction and proceed in the future. But I don't know if that's helpful at all. I would say we typically trust merchants to make the right decisions there for their customers, but want to enable all of those different options for you.
Yeah. And then just finally, I just think that there are a lot of cultural differences in different parts of the world in how people choose to pay, right? I've never had a client that's asked me, why don't you take crypto? It would be great, but I've never had that, right? And so it's just, I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all situation.
Definitely not. I totally agree with you.
And even for storing the card, and then we'll go there. Even for storing the cards, first for a studio, it's a lot more convenient to have potentially a card on file, so you can charge an additional service without friction. So that's one. But also for people who are checking out, instead of going through the same process over and over again, they just store the card, and especially if there's a subscription involved or something that really requires you to have card on file, right? So I think and we've seen everything. We've seen both ends of the spectrum. Sorry, Matthew.
So I want to go back to the stuff you were saying earlier about the LLM and kind of like AI optimization. Is that going to work on the more granular level? Like for studios, it's really a lot of studio near me, right? Like something within 5 to 10 miles. Is that going to be part of what you are doing to help clients? And if so, what do we as Stripe end users need to do to kind of prepare for that?
It's a great question. Admittedly, we just launched the agentic commerce protocol about a week ago with OpenAI, so I'm still getting up to speed on some of the nuances of it since it's pretty technical. But the general idea is that if let's say I am a podcaster, and I'm looking for studios near me, let's say it's South Florida, the idea is that it's very similar where I'm looking for those and it's feeding me results that are relevant to me because it's still very, OpenAI is still interested in you like going through that transaction and having that be successful and a relevant experience for you. So it'd still be pulling potentially podcast studios near me that have favorable ratings and getting those relevant inputs. So it's not totally dissimilar to like how we think about SEO, but I'm just unfamiliar with like all of the individual variables that go into that. Although it's an excellent question and probably something I'll look into more right after we leave today.
The whole idea, I think, and we went through this, I think Wook has more insights into sharing this, but is to make sure that you're discoverable and that you're, when someone searches in GPT versus on a Google search, you come up, and then what Stripe is enabling or making sure that you have a direct checkout from GPT versus getting people onto the website and then booking there. And then potentially what we're looking into making this even more frictionless when you have products, because that kind of native integration can help you more.
GPT recently announced also the App Store, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So most businesses and apps are GPT app. So basically what is working on that. So through GPT, once your studio is listed as the preferred option, if you do the optimization well, you'll be able to book the studio to an agent. And like the prediction is that like 3 years from now, most of the activities will be happening to agents. So every studio will have an agent that exposed to the public, and we'll be booking studios by, hey, like what's the top rated studio in New York? Who is available on Wednesday? Yes, booking a slot, and the agents will do their own.
And the number is wild, like between 85 and 94% or something like that. Like the amount of bookings or amount of these interactions are going to be made through agents, which means that people are necessarily looking for a very frictionless, seamless experience, either voice or chat or whatever works for them, without browsing through the website, going through setups, and the agents are going to remember preferences. They're going to be able to store information, and they're going to even look for specific slots, being able to dive deeper into what podcasters require or clients. That all is basically this. Just maybe a few months down the road where this infrastructure is set up, but the checkout is already in works. It's done, right?
Yep.
Okay. If there's nothing else, I think first, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having us. Thank you, everyone.
And supporting us. And obviously, we're going to be around. So if there's any more questions, you want a side conversation, Brandon's going to stick for a while.